Okay, welcome everybody. We did it. That was awesome. Managed to pull off wedding and here. There's people what? Oh yes. Hi. Baruch Hashem, we have a few. Thank you. I just ran, so this is good. I'm glad. Okay, so we left off on page 9. Yeah, we left off on page 9. So we started this whole concept, and just to like give like a recap of where we are right now, we are still in the introduction where Rabbeinu, yeah, Bachya. It's funny because but that's one I keep hearing people say Bachaye, but this one's yeah. So originally, Shaar HaBitachon was actually written in Arabic.
Cool.
And then it was translated to Hebrew, and now it's translated to English. So, so I keep hearing people say Bachaye, but I think over here it says Bachya.
Especially since it's transliterated to English.
I know. So anyway, so our author starts the introduction by explaining all the benefits of having bitachon. He hasn't yet told us how to do it, although he does. I mean, the more you discover it, the more you like processes, the more you do it, the more you get it. I'm sure everybody had a more bitachon filled week, or at least you attempted.
Totally.
At least Thursday. Probably by Shabbos it was whatever. But anyway, but we're what? In progress, exactly. We're all in progress. But we actually we're going to go through a bunch of the benefits, and then we're going to and then it'll there we go, that comes in handy. We're going to go through a bunch of benefits, and so that's the introduction. The introduction is like all the benefits to having bitachon, and then it's like, how do we do it? Like
marketing technique.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly. Yes. So I want to start with a story. If anyone hasn't yet heard, there was a chassid. This is one of his 3-part books. His name is Reb Zalman Jaffe, and he became very, very close to the Rebbe. And we have all of, I think it's like 200 and I wrote it down somewhere. 260. It's about 260 letters. And he actually was from England, and he used to come twice a year. One of them was Tishrei. And he was one of the first people that like chartered an entire plane from England. He's very, very like wealthy businessman. And Baruch Hashem, at what point in his in the 260 letters that he received from the Rebbe, at one point the Rebbe literally gave him like specific advice about business, like do this or don't do that, get into this deal, don't get into this deal. And at one point, the letter the Rebbe wrote was, don't worry so much about business, more bitachon, more parnasa. And I think that story from a wealthy businessman who has so much on his shoulders, and we're going to, later on in the class, I'm going to tell you another amazing story about him. He has so much on his shoulders, and the Rebbe reminds him, more bitachon, more parnasa. It's a correlation, more bitachon, more parnasa. And I think that's a great way to start our shir for today, because today our author is going to tell us about, the book is called My Encounter with the Rebbe. This is the older version, and the newer version looks dropped different, but I think they're still in print. There's 3 volumes. Very, very, very good. So in addition to this being a bitachon shir, it's also a book club. You haven't noticed, I'm a bookaholic. So Reb Zalman Jaffe, he carried so much weight on his shoulders. He was one of the main donors for like the big Lubavitch organizations in England. He had so many, business deals, companies, and the Rebbe reminded him. So for me, I'm living with this for 2 reasons. One is a personal reminder. Like if this is someone with such weight on his shoulders, how much more so with me, I probably have a little bit less weight on my shoulders.
I
And
don't know, it's hard to translate. Don't worry about business. Don't worry about my life. Like business.
Well, for him, business was his life. Hello. Business was his life, and through business, he was able to like live his life. So it wasn't necessarily about like the business. It was like his personal worry about his personal bitachon, like his personal parnasa. So, so that in of itself, I think it's a very, very powerful thing. And the second part is that how do we translate it? Because kind of like what you're saying now, like how do we translate this into our practical lives? Like for us, let's take a moment and think about our personal parnasa. Whether we're set in a job, whether we get along with our boss or we don't get along with our boss, whether we're starting a new job, whether we have a job, but maybe it's not necessarily paying the bills, or whether it's paying the bills and you love it and you just want to not have that, like you don't want to be stressed out about your parnasa. The Rebbe is telling us more bitachon, more parnasa. Okay, so with that, let's discuss. We're on page 9 and we're on the non-bolded piece. So it says, the author now quotes psukim to illustrate the transitory nature of wealth, right? So we're going to show that wealth comes and wealth goes, and what's the story about it? How should we look at money from our perspective? And again, I'm going to give you, in parentheses, later on in the Sefer, the Rebbe actually, but our author actually tells us exactly how to have clarity about our parnasa, exactly how to have, like he tells us that we're meant to be working. He's not saying, oh, money is evil. And it's actually a famous story that the Rebbe went to camp, like went to visit the camp upstate, which is unheard of. Like the Rebbe would never leave 770 basically.
That's one time the Rebbe left.
Yeah, I think the Rebbe left twice. Yeah. And afterwards he said he'd lost like 6 hours worth of work just from that.
He never made it up or something.
He never made it up, exactly. But while he was there, while the Rebbe was there was a sign that because the counselors are the ones that work as like servers. So the counselors put a sign somewhere, like the servers put a sign, money is the root of all evil. Feel free to drop it here. And it was like a tip box. And the Rebbe walked past and he said, money's not so bad. Like we don't have to be so extreme. I didn't quote the Rebbe exactly, but that idea, like money's not the root of all evil. So anyway, now we're going to discuss that. So as the pasuk says, a rich man lies down with his wealth intact. He opens his eyes and it is no longer his, right? So sometimes someone could go to sleep and they wake up and their life is completely upside down, and that all that money, all their everything is gone. Similarly, the pasuk says, do not toil to become wealthy. From your own understanding desist. And the next pasuk says, before you can set your eyes on it, it's gone. Similarly, it says, at a young age, his wealth will leave him, and at his end, he will be a disgrace. So that all of that in of itself is kind of a little depressing. Just be aware that if we rely on parnasa, if we rely on our wealth, then it's not necessarily a healthy thing to rely on, because it could come and it could go. Alternatively, even if the riches themselves are not removed from him, his ability to enjoy the wealth will be withheld from him by Hashem. As a wise man, Solomon is Shlomo, right? Yes. Shlomo Melech said, God gives him no power to eat from it. And it's very interesting because we did a budgeting course, not a budgeting course. We did a financial course. Part of a small section of it was budgeting. And one of the important parts that we discussed was how important it is to keep an eye on, not on what you earn, but on what you keep, right? So sometimes we feel like we're earning so much, but in the end, it's like, and it all disappears. And people with a lot of money could literally be living month to month. So it's not necessarily about what you earn, it's about what you keep. And having that in mind could also change your viewpoint on your finances in regards to how much of it goes out every month and how much of it are you putting into some sort of savings or investments or whatever. But that's not the point of this class. The point of this class is that we shouldn't rely on it. It comes and sometimes it goes, and we should do our part to make sure to put it all in the right place, but we shouldn't rely on it. Okay, turning the page to page 10. If Hashem doesn't want him to derive any enjoyment from his riches, why then does God leave it in his possession, right? So if we're saying that it's transient, it comes and it goes. So how come he's giving it to him anyway? Like, okay, fine, it's coming. I get this massive paycheck. Hashem's going to take it away from me tonight. So why should he even get it now? It will be with him as a deposit, so that he will guard it from harm until the time it will be returned to the one who is deserving of it and for whom it was meant. Right? So that parnasa may not be mine. It's technically someone else's. I'm just holding it in my bank account until it's time to give it to someone else. But having reliance on Hashem helps us see that, like, being that it's not set, being that my paycheck is not set, every single thing is not the only person, the only thing, the only I can rely on is Hashem. Because Hashem can put it in and Hashem can take it out. So therefore, I shouldn't rely on the money. We should have it. We should do what it takes. It says here we should work hard, but we shouldn't rely and have our all, okay, I'm fine because I have da-da-da in my bank account, right? This concept that sometimes a person is given wealth solely for the purpose of safeguarding it for another is supported by two psukim, as it says, and to the sinner, Hashem gives the urge to gather and amass wealth, to give to one who is good before Hashem. As it says, the wicked man will prepare and the righteous man will use it, and the innocent will divide the money amongst themselves. Right? So sometimes people are working so hard to get it. But in reality, it's meant to be for someone else. Yes. Yes. I was just thinking about that. I should have brought that book. My kids have it.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, practically, how do we, like, have that perspective of, like, not this perspective, particularly about, like, not seeing it as art? Like, how does that work? I know it's also a midah that you need to have in order to give tzedakah properly. Like, I don't, like, how do you have that? Like,
well, we're gonna get to it.
Just continue coming up, like, this concept.
Yes, yeah. There's a whole huge section about parnasa. You see, attitude towards work, where parnasa comes from, your personal work, your personal paycheck, all that stuff. But just having in mind that Hashem is the one who's in charge and Hashem is the one to be relied on, and Hashem, as we said in the previous classes, that Hashem is the living water. He's the one that constantly provides. If we start focusing, we have to make a keli. If we start relying on a keli, then the keli could break. The keli is not the bracha. The keli is just the keli. It just holds the bracha. Okay. The pasuk speaks about the wicked merely preparing for the righteous, implying that the wicked person does not derive any benefit from his wealth. He discussed two possibilities of what might happen to a person who relies solely on his wealth. One, he might lose it. Two, even if he retains it, he will not be able to enjoy it. Now, the author goes further and says that sometimes not only is he not able to enjoy his wealth, but the wealth itself causes bad things to befall him.
Lottery.
Yes, as we spoke about last time.
The
lottery. That's what we spoke about last week. That the lottery, it's in that study. It's it's crazy. Okay. It is possible that his money will be the cause for his misfortune, as well as the cause of the destruction of his soul. Sometimes money can be the source of a person's physical and spiritual downfall. As the pasuk says, there is a sickening evil, and I have seen under the sun riches hoarded by their owner to his own misfortune. Until now, the author elaborated on the spiritual advantage of bitachon, namely that it causes a person to feel at ease. A person who relies on other people or his own talents or wealth, will always worry that success will not last. right? So we're not trying to say, for the millionth time, I want to repeat this. We're not trying to say don't have parnasa. We're not trying to say don't take care of your savings. We're not trying to say don't have a job. We're trying to say don't rely on it. Do what you need to do and know that Hashem is the living water. Hashem is the one that provides you with brachos. Hashem is the one that gives you that parnasa. So back to our dear friend, Reb Zalman Jaffe. So another great story I love of his is that at one point in the many years he was in business and he was in contact with the Rebbe, his business was actually not going so great. And he would write the Rebbe like, what do I do? What do I do? How can I fix this? And he was back and forth about it. And at one point, the Rebbe, we have a letter that the Rebbe wrote to him saying, I was especially pleased to learn from your letter that even when business is not all that great, to learn from your letter that even when business was not all that could be desired for a while, you maintained your charity at somewhat higher of a tenth. So he not only gave Meiser, he gave even when business was not doing great, he gave more than Meiser, which showed that your faith in Hashem did not weaken, and Hashem does not remain in debt and rewards generously, so that before long one can see that one's faith was justified. And then business started to go back up. And it's actually interesting because the Rebbe explains that by giving generously, even when business was bad, the Rebbe once wrote to him, you confidently and completely realize that Hashem is your partner in business. The more tzedakah you give, the larger is Hashem's share in the partnership. Which is, exactly, whoa. Some people might think, like technically we could say, you could call a Rav and say, hey, I'm having this struggle and like I'm really having a hard time paying for things, So technically somehow you could put your tzedakah towards XYZ. Or some people could say, you take, there's an approach that you take Meiser off of the money that you keep after you spend for your living expenses. So you could say, okay, I'm gonna take from that. But in reality, what we've seen here is Reb Zalman Jaffe, not only did he give Meiser, when his business was struggling, he still gave Meiser plus. And then he saw his business flourish, and the Rebbe showed him that it's how much bitachon he had and how much emunah he had that Hashem is going to be. Hashem is the one and only that gives me the bracha of parnasa. And the more I show Hashem, I am committed to this belief, and he did so financially where it hurts, in the pocket. He did so financially. The more he gave into the partnership, the more he gave Hashem, the more Hashem had a partnership with him in his business, and the more he was able to succeed. So having this mentality, this mindset that Hashem is the one who gives me parnasa, Hashem is the one who gives me the paycheck. Yes, it could come as my boss hands it to me, my I'm working so hard. Hashem is the one who decides, and Hashem is the one who decides how much you get to keep from it. So having that in of itself, the more you have that, the more Hashem has a partnership in your personal business, in your personal finances. Yes, go for it.
So how much of it is like making a keli physically and like the ruchnius? Like last night, I don't know if you heard the Mishay event. If you heard the speaker, whatever. So like there are two different stories where one woman spoke and she was like, this guy came to my shul and like my husband told him to put on tefillin and then like all of his problems were fixed basically. And then the other rabbi basically said the same story, but like a different situation. And like the guy put on tefillin and everything was fine. And that's like making the spiritual keli. But like, how much is it? How much do you think? Because then like you're relying on that kind of. So
you're relying on
like
what? Meaning the fact that he
to make the bracha come.
The fact that this guy put on tefillin. So if I put on tefillin, then my life is going to be all good.
Whatever. Then Hashem will give me X, Y, and Z, like whatever it is that you want.
So that's the thing. I I think you make the keli, you don't rely on the keli.
Right.
It's like
Also physically, like you have to go to work. You can't just like stay home and ask for money. Yeah.
Yes, you definitely can't put on tefillin at home, that's for sure. You have, and again, it's not about how much you do per se. It's a different discussion, which he actually discusses how much you should put into your work. It's not about how much you do per se, it's about your mentality with it.
You also have to make sure not to rely on the spiritual keli rather than and forget that, like, so you can look at it as like a spiritual charm, like
Right.
people
So
do that.
the putting on, which is actually
But
funny
if
because
you-
I'm gonna
if
finish
you
off
just,
with a
like,
story
sit
on
and
that.
meditate, have bitachon in Hashem, like let's say this story was about like this guy had cancer, and like he did tefillin and then he was cured. So meaning if he was just like had faith in Hashem to fix him, like then what? Nothing. Like he had to do something. So then it's like, well, it's because he did something
And that's the
you know what I
balance.
mean?
He
Because-
had to do something, but he had to also realize that doing something isn't it. You have to make, it's like you go to a faucet and you turn it on, right? The water is just going. How are you going to drink it? You have to make a cup. You have to hold it, shape it. Back in the day before there's plastic, to shape it, and then you have to put it in the faucet. Then you're able to hold. But you have to realize the water is not from the cup. The water is being brought down by Hashem.
So you're saying like this guy's healing was coming down, let's say, but he wasn't the keli to receive it, maybe?
Yeah, or sometimes the way the mashal that is given more commonly in like Chassidus is that the keli is there, the bracha is there. We just have to align the right hose to it, so to speak. But we have to realize that our alignment is just receiving from Hashem. The tefillin in of themselves is not, it's leather boxes and parchment, right? What it does, it connects the Jew to his source, to Eibishter, to Hashem, and there through that, then he's able to bring brachas to himself. Right? So he has to do what he has to do. Absolutely. He has to not rely on that. It's like going to the doctor. You have to go to the doctor. You have to, if chas v'shalom, not you, but if somebody needs to go to the doctor for whatever reason, he or she has to go to the doctor. But the doctor isn't the one who makes you healthy. The doctor tells you what are the things he believes to hopefully make you healthy. And Hashem is the one who's going to either make it happen or not make it happen.
So hypothetically, like a completely Torah observant person who trusts Hashem should be getting all good brachas in their life.
Hypothetically. And the question is, and this is where Tanya comes in, shifting books, where Tanya comes in, it's sometimes the bracha isn't revealed. Like, for example, there's certain childhood situations that many of us went through that didn't feel good at the time, but they shaped us to be the incredible people we are now. And they shaped us to be able to help someone else in a similar situation. So did it feel like a bracha at the time? No. But was it truly a bracha? Yes. So sometimes, and it's interesting because Limit Chassidus, it's not such a public thing, but Limit Chassidus was originally, it's meaning I don't know if you guys know this, that it can be public. It's technically a project that is Lili Nishmas for my uncle. And my uncle truly believed in me, like, oh, yeah. So he actually passed away of Yanamacha. And he was an incredible person, like incredible person. And it was crazy / incredible to see how much he flourished. It was hard and it was painful and it was a hard battle, how much he flourished through it and how much he turned outward and he said, I need to help the world. He was helping me. He was like my personal cheerleader, but how much he turned to the world and he said, like, I need to make an impact in this world. So someone could say, wow, this guy is really struggling. like he has a curse. This is like a punishment from Hashem. He didn't see it that way. He's like, this is a bracha that's not revealed. And for some people it was revealed, because some people really truly got to see the incredible person that he was.
I heard like a kind of stressful concept about this.
Yeah.
Which is that bad things happen, like it's a bracha, because that person was supposed to reveal that strength within him. But you could like make sure that doesn't happen to you by revealing those strengths without having to get to that point.
Yeah.
That's like a stressful thought. You know what I mean?
So
like,
yeah,
like do all these things that arise, like I'm gonna give you bad things.
No. You see, okay, so that's the thing.
And then reveal my good stuff. So like I have to reveal now and I have to figure out what I can reveal now without like, you know.
So that's
on yourself to reveal.
But that's the thing. Again, that's yes. Okay, let me restate what you just said.
I'm not actually shocked.
No. But this is a very good point. What you said is a very good point, and it very much goes into what we're saying right now, which is, so if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is that there's such a concept that it says, if I were to work on myself and if I were to, bring out this revealed potential within me, then Hashem wouldn't have to give me a test to then bring out the revealed potential within me the hard way, right?
Yes.
So the answer is yes. But if you stress about it, then once, no, I don't mean you personally, but I'm saying if you, Klal, stress about it, then you're thinking that this will come about through your own efforts, which is exactly what we're discussing here. That is not. You have to make a keli. You have to do your part. It doesn't mean that it's a direct correlation. If I don't da-da-da, so I'm going to go get punished and da-da-da, right?
So that's even saying that, like, with personal growth, you do your ishtalos and Hashem kind of makes it whether it works or not.
Exactly. But remembering that
so
Hashem is the one.
Your personal growth is not even in your control.
Correct.
Basically.
Correct. You have to do your part.
But it's also comforting.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Because, like, Hashem is really the one that's gonna take care of
who. And it's funny because we're literally like 30 pages away.
Doing your part is like if you have high standards for yourself, like I'm saying, it could be like intense. Like I'm saying, what is doing your part? That's like.
But it could be okay. Yes, it could be very intense because you have high standards for yourself. That said, number one, it's one of the many times where the Rebbe spoke about having a mashpia. Because you in your own head, you could be overly one way or overly the other way. You have to have someone who is able to help you clarify what are some realistic, workable goals to go through. And someone to remind you that it's not all about you. You need to do your part. Hashem's going to give you the bracha. Hashem's the one who's going to either make it work or make it not work. Right? You need to try your best. You have to make sure not to stress out, because if you're stressing out, that shows that you're relying on your own, right? We said this two weeks ago or last week. If we rely on our own wits and our own cleverness, then all the plans are just not going to work out. We have to do our part. We have to make the keli. Whether it's read the books you need to read, you have to speak to your mashpia, go to the shirim you need to do, journal, whatever it is that you go to Farbrengen, sing a niggin, whatever it is that makes you, And then you have to realize Hashem is the one that's going to decide whether this works or whether it doesn't work. And Hashem is the one that's going to decide whether this is going to be a bracha that I'm going to get in this way, or it's a bracha that's going to come in a different way. It's very interesting. The week before my good friend's wedding, or less than a week, a few days before my good friend's wedding, my other two friends and I were sitting at the corner, and we see her with her, like the kala with her shomeret, and they're like walking. We're like, hey, I can't wait to see your wedding, blah, blah, blah. And like she goes, turns the corner. And then literally within like 2 minutes, not even a minute, we see the chassan from the other direction turning in the other direction, and they like missed each other by like nothingness. We were in shock. We're like, we got to see both of them and like, you know? And Hashem is the one that decided that 1 minute difference was going to happen. He could have made them, boom, it's happened. I've seen it happen. We're like, lovely to see you. And like everyone like runs and like, you know, and it's really cute. It's funny. It's hilarious. But Hashem decided that 1 minute difference between Chassan and Kala is not meant to happen, or it's meant to happen at this point. They're not meant to see each other, right? You need to do your Keli. Hashem decides how it comes down, how the bracha comes down. That makes sense? Okay. Now, we are currently on page 11. Did I know? Okay. Okay, page 11 in the section that says independence. Now the author moves on to list another Torah advantage of bitachon, right? Because we said that there's advantages from Torah perspective and from your Gashmis perspective. So another Torah advantage of bitachon. Among the Torah benefits of bitachon is that trust in Hashem will bring a man not to serve any other entity. Okay, let's go down to the little note on the bottom where it says any other entity. He will not turn to idolatry, seeking for another God. His trust that Hashem provides his needs will prevent the erroneous conclusion that Hashem has left the controls of the world to the discretion of the stars, constellations, and the like, and that he must therefore serve them to receive sustenance from Paslachim. The Talmud teaches that Jews are not subject to the dictum of astrology and fortunes. In the words of the Talmud, Ein Mazel Yisrael. The Maggid of Mezritch, or Dov Ber, explains this with a Chassidic twist, reading the first word with different vowels, Ayin Mazal Yisrael, which means that the source of all divine energy that creates and sustains the world, the divine attribute of Chachma, known as Ayin, is the fortune of a Jew. Furthermore, the pasuk, a star will burst forth from Yaakov, it is to be understood as follows. When the dictums of astrology and fortunes, a star, are drawn down to have effect on the world, burst forth, it is because of the nation of Yaakov, namely through their merit, for their success. Oh, and for their success. So I get this question often.
It's from tomorrow's Chitas. The Star Wars.
It's this week's.
This week's Chitas. Yeah. Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thoughtful.
When you look at Chitas tomorrow, then you know.
I was gonna say, how do you do? I was gonna say, I'm like
English. Like when you read and you get caught in the story. I'm like,
tell the story.
Because it's about Bilam and Balak and all.
Beautiful.
Pretty famous. You guys are learning them.
Yeah, but I've never done tomorrow's. That's very impressive. Baruch Hashem.
I was just looking at the next story.
She's preparing.
Oh, I got someone to
Yay. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So here's what we're saying. I get this question very often. What's the deal with horoscopes? What's the deal with astrology? What's the deal with all that? Like, what's the Jewish perspective?
What's the deal with Balak and this week's Parsha? What do you think?
That's a whole other. That's a Farbrengen. That's a whole. Actually, in today's Chitas, if you go and you listen to Rabbi Gordon in his Chumash shir, he actually discusses it and why is it that he had nevuah, and how does it make sense that such an evil person had nevuah? Is because that way we can keep equal balance. Because if only Yidden and Heilige Tzdikim had nevuah, then we would all technically choose that path. So just as an FYI. Anyway, so when it comes to horoscopes, when it comes to all these, we all know, we've all done these like quizzes. We're like, oh, you're this color, so therefore da-da-da, and you're like this flower, so therefore da-da-da. What month were you born in? What rock is your month, and what does that mean? So we all know that there might be some truth and there might be some like whatever, less than truth in some of these things. That said, we realize here very clearly that we live above that mentality. Whether there really is some truth, as we said here from the Maggid of Mizrich, like maybe let's say there is some truth to some of this stuff. That said, it is all based on the Yidden. It's not the other way around. It doesn't have power over us. We have power over it. So I once heard from my mashpia that if you read that stuff, just know that you can go above and beyond it. So it's
My friend's father,
yes.
he's incredibly talented at reading stars and knowing people's future. He's grim, but he just has this talent, and he doesn't do it for Yidden, but like he'll like know about like the guy that worked for him, like what's gonna happen to them. And my friend was just saying like with Yidden, whatever he read, like even if he notices something, like things change by them.
Yes.
Don't by the guy, and it's like it's just cool to hear from like a modern like like nowadays, and
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we are above and beyond that. Whether you read it or not, whether there's truth to it or not, just know you're not held within those limits. You're above and beyond.
Yeah, I only cry all the time because of cancer. Well, guess what? I don't cry all the time.
Exactly. Okay, so now back to the main topic. Among the Torah benefits of Bitachon is that trust in Hashem will bring a man not to serve any other entity. He won't need to place his hope in man or expect anything from other people. Now, take a moment, let's process this. How many modern psychology whatevers are talking about having self-confidence and don't worry about what people think, and what do you mean don't let people's I don't even know the like slogans because I don't really pay attention to them, but I see so many of these memes and people's like statuses and whatever. It's like, be you, don't care about what anyone else says, like stick to your own blah blah blah. Right now we're gonna learn the Torah proper perspective on that mentality. Okay, let's go for it. So he won't need to place hope in man or expect anything from other people. As a result of self-reliance, he will avoid many behaviors that distract him from divine service. He won't need to be subservient to them in order to win their favor, and he will not feel the need to flatter them. Big deal. Big deal. 1 second. He will therefore, we're page 12. He will therefore not consent to spend time with them on matters that are not related to the service of Hashem. He will not be afraid of their wicked behavior, the repercussions of not flattering them, and he will not be fearful of their arguments with him. Let's take a moment. Like, that takes a lot of self-confidence.
and it's like takes also
Or
certain
confidence in Hashem.
sensitivity, like
You know, some
Confidence in Hashem, not self-confidence.
Confidence in Hashem. That's exactly it.
sometimes I see
Reminds
this.
me of- Sorry, no, it reminds me of like today's Yom Kippur, so like I'm thinking about the Frierdiker Rebbe, and it reminds me of the famous story of the Frierdiker Rebbe where like the guards, or maybe it was the altar Rebbe, I don't remember, but in prison, the interrogators, you know, they were trying to scare, or any Hasidic Rebbe for that matter.
The gun.
Yeah, and like the Rebbeim were so not afraid of the prison guards because, or the KGB, or the Russian government, or whatever.
Or
Obviously,
whoever was the
what they needed to do to avoid getting caught or putting other people's lives in danger.
right.
But when it came to them and themselves being in prison, they knew they had nothing to fear because they just relied on Hashem.
Yes.
what about
Yes.
like those things with like how something like giving your above his eyes or whatever, like what
Yeah.
is that other yid, like when it came to KGB, you know, even Yidden.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but they weren't.
Other Yidden also like have like I
Yeah, but
remember
if
when
you-
did have like this like little upper hand and like the rock, you know what I mean? Like
Well, that's why they're.
I don't know.
The opposite.
I don't know. I don't
They
know.
like, you know, take some kind of tzedakah, and so now like I should
Oh
just,
gosh.
you know.
You have to think, you can't think too deeply.
No,
about other
n-
people. You have to
Well,
think
Yeah.
about you and
know what,
your
the Tanya,
relationship with
Tanya's like, whether you tripped on a rock or someone made you trip, it was meant to happen to you. Anyway.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
It's just like
Correct,
the
correct,
Irma
correct.
situation.
Yes.
Also, that why does a person who's killed someone by mistake
have to run to an air mikla, like why does that family want to get revenge on them or anything? Like why do they have to, it wasn't their fault?
Right.
Because if that happens through their hands, they obviously have to learn something about it.
Yeah.
Also, there's like this thing that like not being scared of others, what others think. You have to have that peace with yourself of what you're doing is correct. When you connect yourself with Torah, you know, like, hey, this is the source I rely on.
Yes.
I think other people, they're choosing something, but they didn't choose it completely. They're not completely sure that it's what they want. So when someone disagrees with them, it's like touching a sore topic. It's like, I'd be like, don't disagree with me. I'm living my life. They have to like,
They have to set a much harder boundary on it because they themselves are so shaky about it.
Yeah.
But if we're doing something that's according to Torah, that we have clarity that this is the right thing. It's funny, I see it in parenting a lot. Not like that, but I see it in parenting a lot. As long as I'm clear about what are the expectations and what I'm going to do or not going to do, everything goes very smoothly. Once I get shaky on things, then like I was gonna say, you're gonna she's nodding. Once I get shaky on things, then everything is like, and even if I never say anything, but the kids can tell. They can tell that I'm like anything. Yeah, like putting. Yeah, or you know, first we're doing this, then we're doing that, or we're having this for dinner instead of that, or what's for snack. Like certain decisions, it's like, okay, this is what it is, and like somehow I exude confidence in it, and like, but once I'm shaky, it's like, and then I have to do more of like a, okay, guys, let's work harder for it. You know, like it's just it's harder when we don't have that clarity. So yes, having the clarity that Hashem, that we're doing what's right and that we're doing things according to Torah gives a lot of that. So again, it's not about self-confidence, it's about confidence in Hashem, like you said. As a result, he won't feel pressure to join them in their inappropriate behavior. Rather, he will divest himself from their favors and the bother of being gracious to them, as well as from the obligation to pay them back for any good they do to him. If he needs to rebuke them, he will not need to be careful from offending them. And if he needs to shame them while rebuking them, he will not be embarrassed and he will not praise their false ways. So here we're going to go down to did we get to that piece yet? Oh, no, it's lower down. Okay. So basically, if at any point in time we have a situation, and this is one of the reasons I was recently I do this all day, every day. I was helping someone with a certain situation, and usually when somebody asks me for advice about things, I always, step number one is making sure that we're doing things according to Torah. Whether it requires, even if it may seem like it's not a Rav question, like sometimes it's like, let's call a Rav, let's make sure that like there's nothing here that could be, you know, iffy or that should be one way or a different way. But once we have that clarified, and it's like, okay, now how do we deal with the other person? And sometimes dealing with the other person means that sometimes we don't need to deal with the other person. Like it's a rare situation, but sometimes it's just better to not even get into it. But when we feel like we rely on them, like for example, I've heard this situation with shluchim where I'm part of this fundraising course, WhatsApp group thing, and somebody asked on there, like, once you get a board and they have a lot of power over the Chabad, let's say, so what happens if they start to ask for things that are against Torah? And once somebody has a lot of power over the things that happen at a Chabad or at a shlichus or at your job, let's say they start asking at your job, they start asking you something that you don't feel comfortable over or you don't feel comfortable about, then what? And so this is where it's that mindset where we have to shift ourselves and we have to say, what does Hashem want from me? Because we have to know that bracha is not going to come from anywhere else. As we said in the previous page, like we can't rely on the idols. We can't rely on the stars, the constellations, it's not coming from anywhere else. The bracha is only coming through Hashem. And as long as you know that you're doing things according to Hashem, then you're able to have the power to say, okay, this is something I don't feel comfortable with. Which is very interesting because once you learn Torah the proper way, then you have what we call moral standards. You have guidelines of what's right and what's not right. And then you're able to figure out. And that's why some people don't even, they're like, why would I need to call a Rav about what my boss is asking me? Because you have to figure out whether this is in line with what Hashem wants from you. If this is in line with what Hashem wants from you, then you can have the confidence in Hashem that even if you don't do what that person said, it's the right thing to do. Does that make sense? Okay. A man who solely relies on other people for his livelihood and success must ensure that he remains on good terms with them so that they will continue to take care of him. This can lead him away from his divine service in a number of ways. He might feel a need to flatter them or even join them in their inappropriate behavior, which he would never have done were he not dependent on them. Again, a situation where someone invites you to have a meeting at a non-kosher restaurant. And it's like, oh, I don't want to offend them. I don't know how I feel. Or for many people in the workforce, it's like shaking hands with the boss. It's like, oh my God. I remember in high school, I used to just carry books everywhere. That was like my survival skill. And then like once at one point I went back to visit and it's like, I have a baby. Like you have to figure out. And that's not for this recording. Not for this recording. So anyway, so the point is that sometimes you have to realize that even if you, let's say, do something that might upset them because, oh, that's so rude. How could you not shake this, the president's hand? Like, how could you? If you're in line with what Hashem wants from you, that bracha will come down regardless, even if you upset the other person, even if they're not so happy. And you know what? Most times, I can't say most, many times you hear amazing stories of people that do what's right. And because they stuck to their morals, because they stuck to what Hashem expects from them, to what they know is right, the other person respected them more for it. Okay.
In the sense of the job.
What?
Talking about the job.
Job, anything.
I'm just thinking like relationships, that's very difficult.
So that's what I'm saying. When it comes to relationships, you have to know that you're doing what's right. And sometimes there's a relationship where you need to call mashpia and figure out what's the right thing to do. Or
Like
you need to
saying no
call
something in a relationship.
Yeah.
Like you have a relationship with someone who loves Lashon Hara and like not that they love it, but they just seem to just fall into it. They don't realize. And like they have strong personalities. So like
And in a situation like that, you have to figure out for yourself what's the right thing to do, which means call a mashpia or call a rav. If the person is saying Lashon Hara in front of me and we're very close, how can I handle the situation so that I'm still in alignment with what Hashem expects from me? Without hopefully not without destroying the relationship. But we have to make sure that we're in alignment with what Hashem expects from us. Okay. He will not, blah, 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 blah. In contrast, a person who has bitachon will not hesitate to rebuke them, even if it requires causing offense. And then we're gonna.
is that for our generation?
Okay, that's why I was like, we're gonna read the footnotes, guys. Just hold a moment. Being offensive, which we said a little bit earlier. Often, if a person is primarily concerned with not being offensive, his rebuke will not have the desired effect.
Yeah, we see that sometimes. When someone's trying too hard to be soft, and then the words lose the effect.
Yes.
Something
Yes.
has to be
Trying
said.
to,
Something.
cater towards certain people, it just looks fake.
Yes.
Never really nice.
Or they just don't get your message.
Yes, all of the above. It looks fake. That doesn't get the message across. And what's very interesting, even non-Jewish sources are openly speaking about lack of leadership and what's in our modern day and age. And what's leadership? Leadership requires a sensitivity to others, but the basis of leadership is standing strong with a certain moral value, a certain ideal, a certain something, standing strong in some way, shape, or form, which now is.
Yeah, it's very hard. Many leaders, they bend to their admirers' every opinion.
Yes, there's
Even if they don't
Wherever
believe
the
in it.
money's at.
Yeah.
Either the money or the opinion or the votes or the whatever, whoever you're trying to make happy, that's what you say, what they need to, but you can tell. And suddenly that in of itself creates a non-trustworthy relationship. When you feel like somebody's just, it's funny, and a very small example of this, but sometimes you go to an event or a l'chaim or whatever, and you're like having small talk with someone, and like they seem to always agree with everything you're saying, even if it sounded like they're going in a different direction, and suddenly they're like, oh yeah, the weather, I love cold weather. Wait, you like warm? I love warm too. You know, it's like, and like something feels fishy. Like it just feels uncomfortable when people do that. So too with us. We have to realize that sometimes we have to stand strong with what we believe, even if it's not the most popular view. And
Cold weather.
trust me, I know. Yes, the cold weather, exactly. Okay. Okay, now the other asterisk thingamabobber, square diamond thingy, requires that he shame them. In general, a person who rebukes another is not allowed to embarrass him. However, there are times when it may be permitted and even necessary to do so. So I would say, if you are in a situation where you feel that you need to shame someone or you need to offend someone according to Torah, please call a Rav and a Mashpia before you open your mouth.
He can't do that for a situation, my friend. It's like on the moment, like, hi, what do we?
But that's what I'm saying.
So
So you asked me whether this is something that should be done in this day and age. Please call a Rav and a Mashpia before you open your mouth, and then figure out whether that's the right thing to be done in this day and age,
Like,
right?
especially because-
Basically, don't do it in the moment.
Exactly.
Especially because
Correct.
precisely err on the side of
I think,
caution.
and the
Yes.
I feel like as a teacher,
Yes.
we've like learned how to, like, we've been given enough tools to know how to, if you wanna like, guide someone in the right direction, like the way to do it without a whole run hearing. Do you know what I mean?
Because you don't have the luxury to asking a Rav every single time you deal with this. You deal with it without shaming them most of the time.
Exactly. And then you figure out what's the
There's like a difference
Just
telling
telling
them
them
that works
the
whole
whole
round.
round.
correct.
Like, it doesn't need to be in front of people.
Right.
Kind of hurts though.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The answer is, you asked me whether this concept relates to nowadays. It's called, you have to ask your Rav about whether this concept relates to your particular scenario with your particular person, with your particular da-da-da. Because I can't tell you this is not relevant to today. I can't say that. It's Torah. And Torah, it says that there's a time and a place for it. Now you have to figure out with your personal Rav whether that was the time and the place for it.
I'm just thinking like that Martin Rava, where it's the revolutionizes that our generation is one where we don't use bitterness and only joy.
Correct. And that's why we can't make a blanket statement that it isn't. I'm not a Rebbe, and I mean, you guys might be, but we can't make a blanket statement. So therefore, I'm saying, if you have a question whether now is a situation that Torah halachically would tell me I should shame someone, call a Rav and figure that out. It's not a yeah. Okay, so I actually.
Yeah, but that's not what this is saying, like the book, which is interesting. I'm saying the book is saying a person who has bitachon will not hesitate to rebuke them, even if it requires causing offense.
If it requires.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
just like seems radical.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Call your.
Do it. Like,
Being afraid of offending someone versus actually like shaming another person are
that's
very
true.
different things.
Yes.
Sometimes nowadays, I think there are still situations where we might have to offend someone, not shame them, but probably offend someone. There's probably more. risk
Which
offending
is that person that you don't shake his hand, you might be offending. What do you mean? I'm the president. How do you not shake my hand? But you could risk offending that person. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I don't feel so bad that offending someone. I do
that's kind of good.
Baruch Hashem. Okay, let's finish off because we have a little bit and I want to finish off with the story. The following, page 13, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. The following psukim will support the above, that someone who trusts in Hashem can rebuke others without fear of repercussions and will be able to stand up to the wicked. That in of itself is huge. It's the first halacha. You should not be embarrassed. as the prophet says, but the Lord Hashem helps me. Therefore, I was not embarrassed. Therefore, I made my face like a flint, and I knew that I would not be ashamed. And as it says, fear them not and do not fear their words. And at the end of the same pasuk, it says, fear not their words and do not be dismayed by them. And as it says, do not fear them. And later in the same chapter, it says, do not be dismayed by them. As it says, as Shamir stronger than flint, I have set your forehead, do not fear them and do not be intimidated by them. Okay, very clear. When we know what's right and we have clarity about what's right, we can stand with our own 2 feet and know what, what's up and what's down. So I want to finish off with an incredible story. I told you I'm a bit of a bookaholic. So another amazing book I would suggest. It's called The People's Rabbi. What? Who's the author? Or who's the person? Rabbi Leib Kramer. And he was one of the founders. He was one of the founders of Chabad Lubavitch in Montreal. He is the heart and soul of everything. He's one of the survivors from Advatsk, one of the students of the Frierdiker Rebbe that had to go through Shanghai and Japan and all craziness in order to make it into safety after the war, during the war. And Baruch Hashem, he ended up in Montreal, and him and 8 other Bachrim that also survived together, they built the entire Montreal, and he was the main fundraiser. He was the main person who opened up all the yeshivas, all the schools, all the everything. Incredible person, amazing story. One of the beautiful stories that I love about this book is that Rabbi Leib Kramer used to connect his community to the Rebbe. So they used to write that whenever anything happened, they would tell him, and then he would write to the Rebbe, or he would bring them to the Rebbe with him, or he was the shliach that they had a kesher with the Rebbe, like to connect to the Rebbe. So at one point, someone approached him. He was a very wealthy businessman, and he approached Rabbi Kramer, and he said, my father is actually critically ill. Can you please write to the Rebbe? Like, what should I do? So he wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe wrote back saying, he wrote to the Rebbe, and as he's writing, he said to him, I'm writing, but whatever the Rebbe tells you to do, you must do. And so the man agreed. He said, okay, I'll do whatever the Rebbe tells me to do. So at one point, he gets a letter. The Rebbe responded that the businessman should check his mezuzahs and his tefillin. Now, this businessman was not from. Tefillin wasn't exactly one of his things that he owned, nor did he put them on every day. So to check them, it's a whole other discussion. So he bought tefillin, he got them checked. And Rabbi Kramer said to him, it's obvious, if the Rebbe is telling you to check your mezuzahs and your tefillin, it's obvious that you have to wear your tefillin every day. Like, it's self-understood. So he did. And every single day, he put on his tefillin, and life continued. He got busy, right? Kramer obviously was a very, very busy man, and they kind of lost touch. They lost track of each other. And at one point, right, Kramer is driving, and he suddenly hears this car like from this direction, and he's honking and honking and honking like a crazy person. And he looks over, and who's the driver? This businessman. So he suddenly pulls over. They both pull over on the side of the road. And the first thing right, Kramer asked him was, how's your father? So he said to him, Baruch Hashem, he's doing great. And I actually wanted to tell you a story. So here they are, parked on the side of the road, story within a story. The businessman tells him, all these years, I've kept my promise. Speaking of putting on tefillin, I've put on tefillin every single day. And then just recently, I had a very tough situation. I had a very, very crucial business appointment with a very wealthy person, and it could have been the make it or break it for my business. But this wealthy person, he's an eccentric guy. He has weird ways of doing things. He's very passionate and very lively human being. And one of his biggest pet peeves is punctuality. He hates it if someone shows up late. Like, he will close deals and say, no, I'm not doing it if someone shows up late. So he flew all the way, I don't know exactly where it was, but he flew all the way over there to go meet this person. And it happened to be that morning, for whatever reason, he woke up late. He missed his alarm and he woke up late. So this businessman who puts on tefillin now has a question. Should I put on tefillin for my father's health? I made a promise. The Rebbe told me I should put on tefillin every single day. But if I do that, I'm going to show up late. My whole deal's finished. Or do I, I'll skip it. I'll try and squeeze it in later. I'll try and during lunch break, I'll try and figure something out. Realistically speaking, he's like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. The eccentric guy is not going to really like me putting on tefillin in the middle of our meeting. So I don't know what to do. And he was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he decided, this is a promise I made. I care more about my father's health, and whatever, it'll be what it'll be. So he put on tefillin and he went to the meeting, and the guy was livid. How could you show up late? How is this? How could you do this to me? And the businessman was trying his best. I'm so sorry. He was so apologetic. I feel so bad. Da, da, da. And at the last second, he decided, he's like, you know what? I'll tell him the truth. He told him the story about the rabbi. He told him the story about tefillin. And he told him how his father's health improved the moment he started putting on tefillin. And the businessman suddenly turned to him and he said, if this is the type of person you are, that you're willing to give up such a business deal that could really destroy your entire business, and you're willing to come late, knowing that I hate when people come late, and you chose all of that for your father's health to put on tefillin, I will make the deal with you on your terms. I won't even negotiate with you. Whatever you want, I'll keep it. And this is the beauty. When we know that we're doing something that's right, that we're in line with what Hashem wants from us, we have a confidence in Hashem. We trust that we're doing the right thing because Hashem is going to give us, Hashem's the one in charge. Hashem's going to be the one that gives us the bracha regardless. So why should we have to go slave ourselves to other people and their honor? I'm not saying don't be a mensch. Be a mensch. Be grateful when somebody gives you something, obviously. But it's our reliance on them. This guy could rely on this other super wealthy businessman that's, he's going to make it or break it for my business. Hashem is the one who's going to decide. And when we walk with such clarity, our decisions are just there's a different feel about us, and everyone can feel it. Walking with confidence in Hashem gives you, and this is what the topic of our this section is, gives you independence. It gives you a comfort. It gives you a stronghold. I want to bench everybody this week and for the rest of your lives. You should have clarity about what exactly Hashem wants from you. And if you don't, call a mashpia, call a rav, ask, what does Hashem want from me in this situation? So you can walk with that confidence that Hashem is with you and he's holding your hand and he's going to support you just like he supported this guy. And Baruch Hashem, he made that deal. And he still puts on tefillin. Chaim, it's Hashem. Continue next week.